And you are now live.
Okay.
Hey, Chrissy.
This is Senate Appropriations Committee, and the first item on our agenda today is to get a preview of the administration's proposed Budget Adjustment Act for this fiscal year. And we have Adam Gresham and Hardy Merrill here to give us that overview. And what I'm going to do, Adam, is let you walk us through. Is there a particular document that you would like us to refer to as you're going through?
So there's two documents.
There's one is language and the other is the worksheet.
Yeah, I thought what I might do is go through an overview of what's in the on the worksheet and in the language, and then we can literally go line by line in the worksheet if that's the chair's pleasure. But the overview will hit on what's in there.
Okay, so do you want to, is that a document that you want to put on the screen?
No, the
No,
overview is just my overview.
Okay, that's, I certainly don't think the committee will object looking at you and having an oral presentation. That way you can see our faces. Adam.
Yeah, absolutely. And there is, however, I would encourage you to look at, there's two documents there that were provided to the committee that I will be kind of going off of, and we can get to the details in a minute. So for just a kind of an overview, first of all, good afternoon, everyone. Good to see people again. And the budget adjustment is, you know, big picture, it's net neutral for general fund, meaning we raise some money through savings, predominantly caseload and CDD savings, which we reinvest in some initiatives. There is also approximately a $4 million general fund waterfall or contingency line in there.
$4 million what, Adam?
A $4 million waterfall or contingency language. I prefer the contingency language, as the chair does, obviously. But
we don't use that W word.
Yeah, I know. I'm trying to get it out of my vocabulary, but I thought, you know, just for old time's sake, I would put it in.
Okay.
But that anticipates the e-board meeting coming up next week, where I suspect we'll get a substantial upgrade in FY21 revenue, 4 million of which we are suggesting we use for this budget adjustment. But I will get into that in more detail as coming up. The notable investments that I would point to here, there is there's a $640,000 investment for the Vets Home. That's from the CRF, Coronavirus Relief Fund. They've incurred a substantial amount of COVID costs, as the committee is probably aware, and this helps offset some of that. So we're doing that in budget adjustment. There's also a total of just under $200,000 investment to bring our departments that have not been involved with body cameras. We're bringing body cameras to DMV, as well as liquor control and the game wardens. And this is just trying to, you know, get them up the curve and you know, what I would say really in simple terms, get with the program. We're trying to make sure that all our law enforcement officers have body cams. I will also say, not to get too far ahead of myself, but the committee will likely see an initiative for corrections in the FY22 budget that does the same thing. There's a $3.5 million proposal for our friends in Burlington, the Burlington High School. As you are aware, they've had some problems with their high school such that they are not able to occupy the building, and they're looking for suitable quarters to get back in with in-person learning, which I think is a high priority for them as well as for the state. And so we are proposing to direct $3.5 million from the coming ESSER Fund ESSER 2 funds from the new COVID legislation that passed at the end of December. there is $3.5 million proposal to help Burlington with fit up and other costs entailed with temporary quarters that they're moving to. There's also a $1.2 million proposal to backfill revenue in Forest Parks and Recreation. As the committee is aware, they had hoped to use COVID money, coronavirus relief fund money, to repay them for essentially a year's worth of reservation cancellations that they were hit with when the pandemic struck. They had to send back reservations for the upcoming, which would have been last summer's camping season. That created a fairly large hole in the Parks Fund because many of those expenses were incurred anyway. And so we are backfilling that 1.2 million. And
So,
to ensure, go ahead.
Adam, refresh our memories. We did do COVID relief to the department, anticipating the cancellations and so forth. But that turned out, was that for a different purpose than what you're talking about?
Yes, that was for outfitting parks to make them COVID compliant for PP&E.
Yeah, I remember that.
There.
But for the
but this
revenues.
This is just replacing lost revenue, is what it is, which CRF obviously couldn't be used for, but they're in need. As an example, they started the year back July 1 with about a $650,000 balance in the Parks Fund. As of the end of November, it was to the negative about 1.4 million. So,
Okay.
They have some severe revenue problems there. Again, not to get too far ahead into FY22, but that will be a budget discussion also in FY22. We'll have some.
All right. I'm sorry.
This is just trying to, provide them resources to get open in the spring. There's also a $3.2 million FEMA use for Everyone Eats. As the committee knows, there was a $6.5 million CRF appropriation for Everyone Eats. That worked out beautifully. We discovered partway through that that was going to be FEMA eligible. So we continued the program through December, and then we anticipate, we haven't yet, but we've been the first component of the Everyone Eats program. I think the first month or two has been approved for FEMA reimbursement. We anticipate that the entire program will be approved. So we are recommending we take the FEMA reimbursements, and instead of clawing back the CRF, we just put those reimbursements towards extending the program through June of 21, another 6 months. And then finally, in terms of investments, there's a small $75,000 CRF investment for the Agency of Human Services to subgrant to Vermont Legal Aid. And that is to continue the a program that was helping offset the cost of electronic filing fees for low-income filers. So that will get that program, keep that program going into this year. There are 3 legislative mandates that we are asking to fund, all of which will be familiar to the committee. One is a little over $400,000 for public safety. And this is to implement the use of force standards and training standards called for in Act 165, otherwise known as S119. There's also a $125,000 request from DCF to implement the Raise the Age, Justice Involved Youth Housing Initiative. This is just the FY21 costs of that. They'll be in FY22. That will be baked into the DCF base. And finally, in terms of legislative mandates, there's a $1 million request for DEC, ANR to start to implement, or to continue to implement really components of the Global Warming Solutions Act that passed. So those are in this spreadsheet that we'll go through. 3 more issues I'd like to bring to your attention. One is Vermont State Colleges. I don't think I have to go through the history of the state colleges, but the committee's aware that we gave them some bridge financing. They also received some coronavirus relief fund financing. Towards the end of last calendar year, in November, they reverted approximately $13.5 million back to the CRF fund that they did not believe they could get out the door by December 30th, keeping in mind that there was a deadline at December 30th for the use of funds. And they had this money that they knew they wouldn't be able to use by December. They thought they could use it if given more time, but they didn't know they had the more time, nor did we, frankly, until the bill was signed at the end of December. So this, I dialed them up last week and asked them whether they could use that money back. And their response was they can certainly use funding. They believe they can use approximately $5 million of CRF immediately within budget adjustments. So our ask here to use what we have on the bottom line in the coronavirus relief fund of 3.6 million. And also, pardon me, you'll see in the language component of the budget adjustment, there is a contingency inserted to direct the first 1.4 million of additional reversions to the CRF to the Vermont State Colleges for a total of $5 million. I would also reveal to the committee that you may hear more of other governor's initiatives with the state colleges in the big bill. But we're trying to get money to them quickly so they can use it, particularly for incoming students that essentially any day now. You will also see a little over $6 million appropriation of general fund and contingency language for a little under $4 million of additional general fund for a total of 10 million general fund to an economic recovery grant program. This will be familiar to members of the Fiscal Committee as well as others, but this is a slightly different program. This is to try to finally get at businesses and organizations that fell through the cracks of the Economic Aid Act of late last year, as well as the various state granting programs for, again, companies that didn't qualify for PPP or other SBA grant programs for various reasons. They weren't set up prior to calendar year 2020, so they didn't have any history or records they could provide, or various other reasons. But we want to, again, reach out to them and recognize that they are in need of relief too. So the ACCD has created a program that will help backfill lost revenues for companies that have fallen through the cracks. And then finally, there is language, no money, but language in the language component of the bill to set up an emergency response fund, which is a kind of a familiar mechanism. We use that in the Joint Fiscal Committee process back in last May, when we were kind of in the height of the pandemic. And, I like to say I had the automatic check writer on overdrive, just, building surge centers, buying equipment, getting ventilators, and all the other stuff that we needed to respond to the pandemic. The governor was given authorization from the Joint Fiscal Committee to have a $75 million pool of money that he could draw on for emergency response. What we're recommending is to create a similar type of vehicle, an emergency response fund, and to direct into that fund additional reversions to the coronavirus relief fund. So as money comes back into the fund from various appropriations that aren't used, or for less FEMA state match than we anticipate, if money is sent back into the fund, we would direct it towards this emergency response fund, which the governor would be able to use. And this is really precautionary. I mean, the hope is we'll never need it, but we are at a point now that is very worrying to us. And again, we're thinking that things will subside, certainly as we roll out vaccines, but we don't know. So we're just looking kind of as a precautionary way to create a mechanism that could be at the governor's use in the event of an emergency. So that is an overview of kind of what's in there. I think I hit on all the high points, but if the chair is okay, I'd be happy to, as they say, go to the videotape and we can go through the, pardon me, the spreadsheet. I did, before doing that though, want to, I meant to do this when I started, to introduce and acknowledge that my colleague Hardy Merrill is with me. He is our new budget director, and he and I we're going to tag team through this spreadsheet as we go through it.
Adam, before we start the spreadsheet,
Yeah.
Senator Sears has a question.
Yes, sir.
You're muted.
I have a question specifically about an item that's in your spreadsheet, but I wanted to highlight it, and that's the nearly $2 million for the Woodside lease.
Right.
I did not understand how that's, first of all, I'm not sure that's happening before next fiscal year. And I doubt it is. I thought the projection was somewhere in November of 2021. Secondly, it's not clear to me why that's general fund money. We're basically loaning money, as I understand it. Or are we taking it off a lease? How is that all working?
So that may be, I don't know if I'd
maybe we need to hear from Commissioner Brown in committee.
You do, and that may be a misnomer too. It's really, I mean, it's Woodside, but it's really not. It's really Beckett is what it is. I mean, we're outfitting the new facility for the type of facility that we need for the people that will be staying there. So, I think Woodside, I think we forevermore need to retire that name.
Well,
So,
we tried to in here, but you put it back up there.
well,
You weren't on the spreadsheet on a particular line, Dick.
Yeah, it's on the,
It's
so it's
B327.
It's B327, right?
Okay.
I think, well, we should have a line item, I guess. My responsibility on the budget was Woodside. We took Woodside out of that and put in family services. And I guess still my responsibility. This is family services.
I think if we get it right, the FY22 big bill, hopefully there will be a different name there. And
Okay.
you're welcome to come after me if that's not the case.
I will. We'll enjoy it. But I am concerned about funding it in the budget adjustment when I doubt it's going to get spent in this by the end of this fiscal year.
Well, we're going to do our best for that. But yeah, I think that is a better question for Commissioner Brown.
Okay.
Madam Chair?
Yes.
I couldn't hear Senator Sears' question. I wonder if he might repeat it.
Yeah, it's referencing on the spreadsheet, the section B327, and it's the requested money for the fit up of a replacement juvenile treatment facility. And Senator Sears' concern, I would echo. I had a conversation with the folks from.
Thank you. I think I had my wires crossed, and that's why you couldn't hear me.
You had your wires crossed?
Yeah, which isn't unusual in this.
And it seems like there's an awful lot of discussion and more. And in fact, at this point, there's still, because they haven't reached a point where it's developed enough to even start having community meetings and presentation, which was one of the conditions that came with the approval of the proposal by Justice Oversight and then Joint Fiscal Committee. So I think that's a question where a timing certainly question for budget adjustment versus maybe later on. So yeah, okay. Any do you want to start? Do you want to go through the spreadsheet? I mean, it seems like what you've done is cover a lot, but we can, committee, do you have a desire to go more than the highlights, or should we simply let
I-
Adam and Hardy talk about things in general and language, and then have the various department commissioners come in with greater information for us. Just Senator Baruth, you.
I'm happy to take whatever path makes sense to you. I do have a question about one of the items here. Should I hold that?
Well, I don't know. Now you've piqued our curiosity. What's your question?
I can
So,
guess what it is, but
well, first of all,
Is
I
it
wanted.
Burlington High School?
It is.
no.
I wanted to say, first of all, I'm extremely appreciative of the governor's team meeting with folks on the ground here and finding a way to address that. I am wondering, it says, if I'm reading the spreadsheet right, it says ERA fund?
Esser.
Esser.
No,
Esser.
it says ERA on the spreadsheet.
Huh?
I thought I read Esser.
Now, if you look at the top of page 2,
It says federal funds, including ERA, but if you go
Right.
over
Yeah,
to the
yeah.
description,
Right.
it
No,
says Esser.
so that's my question is, are ERA funds actually still somehow in play?
So I'm going to say we had, not in this appropriation, but there's something like a couple $1 million of Aero money. I mean, this is not involved in this budget adjustment, but there is still a tiny amount that is still kicking around.
It's just a notation, but doesn't apply in this case.
Okay, I'm confused. It says includes ERA.
Well, if error, if there is any error, but in this case, there isn't.
Okay, Okay.
That happens to just be a long-standing column header.
I see. Okay,
So, yep.
yeah, because ESSER makes sense, but I was wondering what the 2009 designation was.
It's a legacy heading, simply because there's still a little of that money floating around.
Got it. In any event, please accept my thanks for addressing Burlington High. I'm actually taking my daughter to Macy's later today, so.
So other thoughts or just general questions? Senator Westman.
Well, one comment, since the fit up of Macy's, I hear we've been told is more like 10 million, and this is maybe a third of that. Are we committing ourselves to more? And my second comment to you, Madam Chair, is maybe I would prefer we move on and let the department heads come in and give it the detail. So
Okay, all right. Commissioner, just to let you know, the committee has been looking at where we see that there's a need to be a bit more nimble and move forward on certain language that's necessary, clarification, as well as giving the necessary legislative approval for some of the items that were in mutual agreement. So this committee is kind of doing a technical CRF bill that would include clarification of the language so that we can pay the vendors for Commissioner Tierney has in progress for work approved prior to December 20th. We feel it would be advantageous to, because we're using the funds to address the Anyone Eats proposal that you have. Also, we're operating right now on Cosmic Trust around the quarter extension on the e-filing and get that off the table so that there are no surprises. We wanted to try to make our committee process as nimble and reflective of immediate needs in the absence of joint fiscal. So some of the time sensitive or more technical clarifications where our plan is to move them similar to what we did with the workers' comp deadline, move those ahead, and then recognizing some of the balance of the budget adjustment would move forward along the regular time frame process starting in the House.
All right. I mean, one thought that we've had on that is we can be, what I would call maximally nimble. If, for example, on this rental assistance grant, it is going to be a new grant, a new CFDA, so that will go through the AA1 process. We could set up the same type of vehicle that we did with the Joint Fiscal Committee back in May, and set aside a component of that to be used for emergent needs, and then with the approval of the committee, we could go right out and spend it.
We've had some discussion on that. We heard testimony because we know that as a result of reallocating $3 million away from rental assistance, with the benefit of actual experience, we know that applications, and there wasn't sufficient money to cover the applications of eligible individuals in December. And so there was, we had a suggestion made from Richard Williams. Let me assure you, it wasn't anybody in your administration advancing it, that we carve out a certain amount. They had talked about as much as 50 million. I think our economic development and housing people feel maybe that's a bit too much to put out of the gate, but
I would think so.
What?
Yeah, I don't know, but that seems like a lot of money.
And so maybe a couple of months to let the budget adjustment get through, understand what's in it, and do it more comprehensively, because that doesn't address the problem about utility arrearages and so forth, which is another related piece of that funding. So whether we do that or not, or whether we do, say, based on actual experience, 2 months and move 10 million or 5 or something, and allow more time for committee discussion. We're just trying to make sure that benefits flow and we can get the assistance out to people and pay our bills and do it in a fast way. So
Right.
That's our thinking. I don't think there's any huge surprises relative to what we've been talking about. It's just a matter of how we want to move forward and as quickly on some areas and not compromise the time for the rest of the budget adjustment discussions, whether it be related to this use of general fund to the juvenile facility, et cetera. So I just wanted to alert you to that thinking.
And we're ready to work with you guys. I mean,
Yeah.
again, with rental assistance, we're anticipating the money by January 27th.
Yeah.
So, and that, they said they had to get it out the door in 30 days.
Yeah.
So that would be the 27th. We're happy to move from the morning of the 27th on. And I think that the AA1 process I mentioned that we, adopted back in May, I think could be a good, structure. But,
Well, if we, 50 million seems like an awful lot without at least a committee review, but something like 10 might be, that would allow once the money is available and can be used, to allow it to start flowing and
Right.
not have any hold up in that process. So I don't know if Josh Hanford said anything to you or not.
We've had some conversations, but, he obviously would have a better handle on precisely the costs that they are currently incurring. And he's anticipating they're going to grow, obviously. So I think he'd be a good person to speak to on that.
Well, we did yesterday afternoon, and we know that the applications for December came in about 2.8 that are being
Right.
held. So if we put 10 million in, it seems like maybe that'll carry us for sufficient time to have the committee work and make sure assistance still goes out to families. But that's still, the committee has not made a final decision. I want everybody and anybody listening, we have not. That was just simply something that was brought to our attention last night. If we deal with the December applications that have been held for the fact that the money wasn't sufficient to pay those benefits, then the desire that there not be a huge hiatus between when that program in December to when the new benefits can start flowing out to assist people. That was in summary. Am I getting the committee discussion
Yeah.
of yesterday?
I thought there were the one piece that's the rental assistance program, the new money coming is going to have different rules than what December's was. So
Yes, we know that, and we're trying to put in language, Adam, so that if there is a way of swapping out any of this additional money, which is a huge chunk Vermont is getting with CRF, so that we can use CRF in other more flexible ways. We're trying to put in that contingency language.
We've actually looked at that fairly carefully. This was on, purposeful or not, but the language around that rental assistance program is pretty narrow.
Yeah, I know.
It's pretty narrow. It's almost diabolically so. It's like they gave us the money grudgingly at best.
I share those concerns, but we also know with the CRF, somehow the guidelines or interpretations got a little bit more liberal from start to finish. And so we want to be optimistic and keep every option available. So
yeah, there'll be a new sheriff in town soon, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Not too many days. So questions for Adam. I think we can look at the spreadsheet. I think you've really gone through the highlights. In terms of the language, is there anything other than specific, other than more technical, or are you sneaking in something that we should know about?
Well, the only thing that you would not know about by my conversation so far is there is one part of one section of the language that has no appropriation, but we're asking for the repeal of two sections of Act 154 that dealt with that were very prescriptive on the usage of state-owned space. That it was section E126.
This is the 133 State Street issue.
And it's the issue that we're trying to manage state property. We think we have an opportunity, particularly this year with bodies moving around and perhaps usage of space that's different than we may have anticipated, but we just want the ability to manage state space in the best interests of state employees and the people of Vermont. And there are two sections of that were very prescriptive that now, in cool light of day, after we see kind of what's going on, seem rather archaic. So we're asking for the repeal of those two.
All right. Well,
other than that, there's some water or contingency language in there for you. And there's the establishment of the emergency response fund. And Marty, I don't know if I've missed anything else that hasn't already come out.
There's some language pertaining to technical adjustments that we haven't specifically mentioned that are, really accounting items that I don't think.
There are two in the weeds for Friday afternoon. Senator Sears, you had your hand up.
I'm gonna go back to section XX, which has to do with.
You got to get closer. We can't hear you.
I'm sorry. It has to do with the buildings and general services and 133 State Street and so forth. Wasn't that part of the institutions committee's work in the House?
I think they contributed to it, but it ended up in Act 154.
Yes, and they will have an opportunity to revisit it in light of the fact that we probably are going to work
before
remotely.
The budget adjustment gets to us, the House institutions and corrections.
Yeah. I'm very happy that they can have the first bite on that apple.
I am too. I was looking forward to my new office over there.
Yeah. Okay. Other comments? Hardy, you had anything else you want to add that the commissioner might have not touched on?
I don't. If there aren't any questions, the overview was fairly comprehensive. Perhaps one point I'm not sure that was made in the overview is that there is quite a bit of funding involved with non-congregate emergency housing, and that's a big part of what's going on within AHS. It does include an allocation of coronavirus relief funds of 2.6 million from AHS, which is the 25% state match involved with non-congregate housing expenses, and there's another 15 million of FEMA match that's involved within the context of the whole AHS structure. So while there have been substantial caseload reductions within AHS and savings to the general fund there, the emergency housing costs were certainly a theme that jumps out at the budget adjustment.
Yeah. And also the assumption around CRF use for indirects, which turned out not to be permissible, and that had to be backed out. And so that has made a difference on availability of funds as well.
Yes.
Okay. Other questions for finance and management folk? If not, we can get back into our discussion about this, our fast track little mini bill. Alice.
I just have one question of a minor matter that a constituent has contacted me about with regard to the VSNP program, which is under Sean Brown's shop. I'm told that they had veterinarians who performed surgery on cats and dogs to spay or neuter them haven't been paid, and that the program has run out of money. And I don't know what the
Ouch.
I don't know the story behind that. It's not a great deal of money, as I understand. I don't even know the exact amount, but I wonder if someone could just check on that and see if indeed there are bills outstanding and there's no money to pay them.
I will follow up with Commissioner Brown immediately.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I suspect that certainly care of pets and have been a real source of concern in the pandemic as well. So.
And apparently there isn't as much money coming in from the town clerks because many people are skipping getting them licensed. And that's where I think there's a $2 fee that comes to the state from that pays for this program.
Okay.
So.
Is that CRF eligible?
VSNP? I don't know. But I'll ask
like
Guidehouse.
Oh, all right. Seems to me like that's, we can put them into the healthcare stabilization fund, right?
Well, we do have the issue of the COVID puppies and kittens, so I do feel like there's something there.
Yeah, and thank you for checking on that. Any other questions, however arcane? Okay, thank you both for coming. And otherwise, we're going to go back and sort of finish out our mini expedited bill here, Adam.
That's okay. Obviously, we're very happy to work with you on that. Before I go, I'd be remiss in not saying that it's a pleasure to see Senator Baruth and Senator Ballin here. I mean, you guys add some color to the committee. Not that it needed color, but nice to see you guys.
Jane, may I ask one question?
Oh, yes, you may, Stephanie. You may even ask two.
In the language, you had extended the Everybody Eats through the end of June. And
Yes.
do you have an estimate of how much of the 4.8 that was freed up in CRF from the Everybody Eats FEMA match that would be used to go to the end of June?
So that's an interesting question, a bit in the weeds, but our estimate was that it would be substantially empty by the end of June. However, as we thought about it, we thought, well, every new dollar that we spend will also qualify for FEMA. So it's like the gift that keeps on giving. Mm-hmm. So I think actually, if it works the way we think it should work, that we are, presenting additional spending and being matched 75%, we probably will have a little over $1 million left. But that is if everything works the way we think it's going to work.
Yeah, we were trying to reconcile that date with yesterday's conversation, and we were thinking, well, maybe that got us through to the April, and you were using June. So we just wanted to
Well, the burn rate was about $400,000 a week. It was as high as $500,000 a week during the height of it. I think that's receded a bit, but that could pick up again. But again, assuming that we can get additional FEMA match for the spending that we're doing, we should have no problem getting through June. If we're wrong in that, then I suspect we'll get somewhere in and around June, but probably no further.
Okay, so the question.
But if we do get the match on the remaining, I mean, it seems like it could be substantially.
We thought about $1.5 million, maybe as high as
Okay.
2, but that's again, if everything works out perfectly, and I don't want the committee to think that I've thought this through too deeply. But,
Our concern was there enough of a match to get us through June date? That was the question.
Right.
Because right now we're doing this within the context of the allocation that was already made to the program, being able to go a lot further because it's now only 25% of the cost. And so the question was, is the match there? Or if we had that language in, as long as the FEMA's there, then would we possibly be obligating the need to find other state match to go with the FEMA?
Yeah, the language was specifically written as long as there is available federal money. We were not assuming we would put state money into it.
Okay, well, that was the concern, is if that CRF money was depleted, even though the FEMA money would still be there, then are we writing in something that obligates the state match for the FEMA?
Right. Huh. Okay, let me.
That was my question to Stephanie last night when I was looking at it.
Okay.
So, okay, well, that, anything else that I'm probably brought up and have promptly forgotten that we need to have Adam check on?
Are we gonna have the commissioners in?
For the budget adjustment, absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
But not for the mini bill. We actually had the people in yesterday.
Oh, yes, I know that, but this
Yeah.
material we've got in front of us, the commissioners are coming in.
Yes, and then, of course, then we'll have to wait for the House to act on the bill, and then we can move pretty quickly once they've taken action.
I had a question on the Global Warming Solutions Act. You know,
Okay.
but we can do that when the commissioner comes in.
Well, yes, I think Julie Moore will be the person to answer that. And my conversations from Julie were some of the need for that additional money for contracted help was to meet the fairly aggressive timeframes in the legislation for work to be completed. And therefore, the amount of work that could be done in-house was less, and there would be a need to contract out for outside help at a greater amount than it was originally thought.
Because didn't we already give them money for 3 people and?
Yes, we did. But then we prorated it. And not only that, we prorated the whole thing, I believe, not just the positions. And so that's, and then of course, by the time the bill was passed, additional time was lost. So some of the work that could have been done in-house with more time wasn't possible to undertake. So we'll have her come in and explain it to us.
Yeah.
But anything to do with budget adjustment is going to be the subject to follow-up testimony from the various department or agency heads. And this is just an overview today.
Yeah.
And we'll schedule, our plan is to schedule kind of in tandem with the House, so that people they have testify in the morning will schedule for the afternoon.
That we should get the same story that way for sure.
Yeah, and the other thing, I talked with the chair, and obviously her desire is to get the budget adjustment wrapped up as soon as they possibly can, so that they're ready to move post haste once the budget itself comes in.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So Stephanie, any other questions that came up?
No, not for me.
Okay. All right. So we've got some technical language that should move ahead. You had mentioned certainly the language that Commissioner Tierney need to pay the bills, and that's certainly right there on the top of the list. Everybody Eats is one. Dealing with the e-filing for another quarter. And then we're going to have some discussion about using CRF for that 1 month in December. And we understand the relationship of available CRF money with your Vermont State College proposal. So that's be a topic of more discussion this afternoon. Okay.
All right. Well, thank you.
Yeah. Do you want to stay tuned, or you're welcome to stay?
I may well, lurking in the background.
Fine. All right. I know that you've found it helpful in the past, and you're welcome to stay and listen to our discussion. So committee, what we have are, we had closed out a couple of things. We closed out the language necessary on the CRF spending for broadband, and we had the language that Maria Royal had provided. Then we had the language that would extend the funding for the e-filing through March. Stephanie, you had March 30th, but March is 31 days. So I thought maybe
got mixed up on the months.
Okay.
Becky Wasserman is going to join us at 2 to walk through the draft. If you wanted, if the committee wanted to take like a 10-minute break and come back at 2, I don't know.
Okay, we can do that. That's fine. I had some leftover pizza for lunch and I'm dying of thirst. So I'm just as soon happy to take a 10-minute break, and we'll come back at 2.
We could all